At the edge of history's abyss, one moment can decide if a people remain free. On a clear September day in Utah, free speech was silenced by a bullet. Charlie Kirk stood on stage mid-sentence when gunfire split the air. Screams erupted, a microphone clattered to the floor. In that instant, words turned to blood. This week I'm doing something different. Instead of our usual constitutional deep dive, I want to share a story, part history, part warning, that brings the stakes of free speech into sharp focus. I want to do so because a deeper truth is slipping from memory. The ordered peace we take for granted when we walk to the coffee shop, when we worship, when we debate with our neighbor, is not natural. Peaceful order in civil society is built, it is fragile, and it can be broken in an instant. What happened on that stage in Utah wasn't just the loss of one man's life. It was the latest chapter in a dark pattern, when hatred of ideas boils over into violence against the people who speak them. We have seen the play before, through centuries untold. Voices stifled by violence when ignorance and hatred grew bold. Consider the long litany of martyrs for belief, each one a reminder that silencing brings grief. Socrates drank from the hemlock cup, wisdom cast aside for daring Athens' youth to question, not to hide. Lincoln in a theater's glow, a bullet found its mark. The great emancipator fell into eternal dark. Tsar Alexander II, reformer with a plan, was shattered by explosives, slain by his own land. Different centuries, different causes, but with the same story. A bullet, a blade, a bomb ends a life, but not the struggle of ideas. How many more names must be added? Mahatma Gandhi, saint of nonviolence, felled by hatred's hand, his dream of unity undone across a fractured land. Yitzhak Rabin, champion of peace, in Tel Aviv was slain, reconciliation's promise left bleeding in the rain. Charlie Hebdo, cartoonists with pens they dared to fight, yet ink was met with bullets on a January night. We do not whisper these names in despair, we shout them in defiance. Every martyr of free speech, including Charlie, hurls a challenge across the centuries. Will you cower, or will you carry the torch? Their killers thought they could erase ideas with violence. Instead, their bullets forged legends, their bombs gave birth to movements. Let their lives ignite in us an iron vow. Never again will forced silence triumph over truth. The founding fathers of the United States understood this peril profoundly. Having studied history's tempests, they enshrined free speech in the very First Amendment as our republic's bedrock. Washington, Jefferson, Franklin, Madison. They knew that to silence speech is to invite tyranny's reign. As Benjamin Franklin wrote, without freedom of thought, there can be no such thing as wisdom, and no such thing as public liberty without freedom of speech. They knew liberty lives or dies on our right to speak, debate, disagree. George Washington warned that if freedom of speech were ever taken away, dumb and silent we may be led like sheep to the slaughter. The founders, in their wisdom, protected speech explicitly, not because they all loved dissent, but because they knew the alternative was far worse. For most of human history, disagreement meant blood. The 30 Years' War alone turned Europe into a graveyard where millions died for their faith. Civil wars, inquisitions, purges. Centuries when killing those who thought differently was the norm, not the exception. The Crusades, the French Revolution, the English Civil War, the Spanish Inquisition, the Russian Revolution, the Chinese Cultural Revolution. Again and again, we've chosen killing over listening. By contrast, the last couple hundred years have been an anomaly. Imperfect, yeah, but marked by a new experiment in settling disputes with words instead of weapons. That peace is not natural. It is built, it is fragile, it's easily lost. And if we forget how unusual it is, if we grow careless, history will not hesitate to remind us how quickly violence returns. But here's the question. What will you do when free speech is under fire? Will you defend the right of someone you despise to speak? Because that's the choice. Not Washington's, not Madison's. Yours right now decides if liberty survives. Today, how many among us spit on that wisdom out of arrogance? In our modern hubris, some believe they know better than Madison, better than Voltaire, better than Milton. We see cancel mobs and censors convinced that silencing wrong ideas is righteous. We see rulers and activists alike, left and right, so certain of their moral superiority that they would muzzle those who dissent. This is the folly of our age, the belief that we can decide who deserves a voice. Blinded by rage, people forsake dialogue for domination, tearing down the very safeguards of liberty. In this hubris, they unleash the ancient demons our founders feared: intolerance, persecution, violence. The nightfall of reason gathers when we say, my side is infallible, your voice must be exiled. From there is a short, dark road to tyranny, into the tragedy that took Charlie Kirk's life. Death, I suppose, is the worst of it. I represent many journalists, influencers, documentarians who uncover and expose difficult truths. Some of them get death threats, but even more face speech suppression and bullying through 1,000 cuts. Litigation threat letters and frivolous lawsuits abound. With any luck, they won't lose their lives, but legal fees add up quickly and can easily shut down upstart operations. In the end, whether by bullet or by billable hour, the aim is the same: to choke voices off. We do our best at our firm to lend pro bono hours, shave fees, throw in extra work, but there's only so much two guys can do. The problem's deeper. It's culturally established. If we don't tear this poisonous root out, it will strangle liberty in our lifetime. This popular modern arrogance we're discussing shrugs off the founder's warning and teeters at the abyss of history's mistakes. It's the arrogance of those who shout down speakers, who throw punches instead of making points, who think burning a flag or a book or a man will somehow win the argument. It's a poisonous pride that births chaos. And as rage is indulged and free speech undermined, the center phrase: demons of division slip their chains, hatred, violence, anarchy. We have been warned by history's ghost and by our own Constitution. Will we now ignore them at our own peril? We must step back from that precipice of violence and find solid ground in the example of history's great souls. Look to those who fought darkness with light: Mahatma Gandhi, who stood unarmed before an empire and proved that compassion can conquer brute force. He resisted evil not with hatred, but with peaceful defiance and love. Martin Luther King, who echoed that hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. He faced dogs and fire hoses, bombs and bullets, yet refused to repay hate with hate, showing that courage and compassion together are stronger than terror. The Buddha, who taught for millennia that anger is not quenched by anger, but only by non-anger, by understanding. Only compassion can pacify the fires of resentment, and his wisdom has guided countless towards peace. Jesus of Nazareth, who uttered forgiveness even as nails pierced his hands. Father, forgive them, embodying an ultimate rejection of vengeance. He taught us to love our enemies, and in his sacrifice showed that unyielding mercy can redeem a violent world. These giants, different faiths, different eras, one truth, show us another way. They prove that answering injustice with violence is a dead end. True strength lies in restraint, in the power of conscience and love. They beckon us to transform our anger into understanding, our frustration into dialogue. They urge us, do not let righteous passion turn into self-righteous destruction. We are not powerless observers. We are the authors of the next chapter of America. Here are two ways that you can uphold free speech and stem the tide of political violence today. First, guard the flame of dialogue. Defend everyone's right to speak, especially, most especially, those with whom you vehemently disagree. When you encounter opinions that anger you, take a deep breath instead of clenching a fist. Answer bad speech with better speech, not with a punch, certainly not with a shot. Engage in debate, ask questions, stand up when you see censorship. whether in a classroom, online, or in your community, and say, let them speak. By keeping the conversation going, well, you keep civil society going. And the second, build bridges, not battlegrounds. Reach out in small human ways to those on the other side. Have coffee with a neighbor who votes differently. Break bread with someone your friends ridicule. Listen to their story. It's hard to vilify someone once you've looked into their eyes and heard their heart. Support initiatives that bring a variety of people together in dialogue in your school, your faith community, your workplace. Be the voice of calm on social media when tempers flare. Refuse to forward the angry meme that dehumanizes your opponent. In doing so, you reduce the temperature and model the respect that makes violence rather unthinkable. These sound somewhat trite. They sound aspirational. But these are the truest small steps each one of us can do to reclaim a culture that respects free speech and a compassion towards the humanity we find in our common man. I think they're commendable. Let's refuse to let Charlie Kirk's death be in vain. Not with censorship, not with more violence, but with courage. Because in the end, the question is not whether speech is dangerous. It is. The real question is whether you will defend it anyway. Will you? We stand at the edge of history's abyss. Step forward and liberty dies. Step back and liberty lives. The choice is ours. Today. Right now. I'm Benjamin Barr, and this channel is dedicated to explain why free speech must never fall silent.